start by saying I hope I'm as excited as you guys are to learn about Kevin's background, because he is a very accomplished person, worked with a lot of huge, big names, doing things that, some of which you may be familiar with, some of which you may say to yourself, wow, you can do that in this business, that's really cool. Well, I was just talking to him upstairs, and we realized that we were in a very similar circle early on, and very related to Orlando, because we both worked with New Kids on the Block, which I don't think you guys will know what that is.
Anybody? New Kids? Anyone?
Yeah.
Hanging tough?
Amongst other artists. I did want to start the discussion by just getting a show of hands for our benefit of the kinds of things that you guys are pursuing or you're studying. So if you can just, I'm going to kind of rattle off different areas you've studied. If I miss something you're in, just shout it out. But how many of you are studying concert production? Okay. Studio production, engineers? Okay. You have a theatrical aspect? No? Live show? Don't you have a live show already? For concert? Right. Okay.
It's show production.
Show production. Okay, show production? All right. And let's just, for sake of covering everybody, art direction? No? Did I miss anything that some of you were doing? Recording arts. Well, that's, I guess I put that with production for studio. Recording arts, sorry.
Musicians, songwriters? First of all, let me just say that I'm happy to be here at your university. It's absolutely amazing because there was nothing like this when I went to school. You guys have so much in one location that you can benefit from, so please take advantage of it. If you take anything away from this day today, take advantage of what you've got here, because in a minute you're going to be out of here and you're going to be doing what you want to do, and you'll be looking back like, oh man, you know what? I wish I had the time now to learn scoring to video, because I could have did that, you know, when I was back in college. Oh no, what if I did this? You have the time now, so take advantage of it.
That's good advice.
Sorry.
That's okay. The other thing that I was going to just suggest, because I think it's, you know, as you have questions in your mind throughout our discussion, feel free to raise your hand and ask them. We will do kind of a question and answer type of thing at the end if you want to wait till the end, but if you've got that burning question, seize the moment and put your hand up, and if they don't hear you, just give us a yell. Try not to interrupt too much, but you know, we're happy to have questions answered along the way. I wanted to get started with you. Just, you do a lot of different things, and so I thought maybe we could talk a little bit about each of the aspects. I mean, I have a list here that's written producer, musical director, musical designer, keyboardist, digital audio programmer. I mean, that's just a lot of different areas to cover. Can you tell us a little bit about each of those areas, what they do, not to be too basic, but, and kind of streamline it?
Sure.
And if you have any preferences of what you prefer to do over others, or if they're all interconnected.
Well, when I first started off, I was a keyboard player. And my first break came living in Boston with the New Kids on the Block. So that was way back in 1989. I had a chance to go out on tour with those guys. And as I started my touring career, I started realizing that, you know, everybody writes, everybody produces. So I tried to get more into that side of the business. But then I realized in the bands that I was performing in, what if I wanted to do a bit more? So the next step up is musical director. And in that role, I get to work with so many different people. Besides the artists, with all the different production teams that put together concerts. So you're working with lighting directors, video directors, choreographers. And so you get to express your creativity through another artist's music, but you're creating something, you know, specifically for the stage, and it's a brand new experience that most people aren't going to get on the records. And then from there, it turned into, hey, we need somebody to mix this DVD, and you know, you're the musical director, and you kind of know everything about this music. You know the producers that did it, so do you want to try it? And then I was like, sure, why not? So then you end up doing that. And I just kept borrowing and going to the point now where everything that I do, I feel awkward if I'm not kind of in all of it. If I'm just doing one thing, I kind of lose a little bit of focus because I like to learn everybody else's job, and that will benefit my job.
So you touched on getting started as a keyboard player, and everyone here's going to school, studying different things. Along the way, did you go to school to study music, or did you just start playing at home? Like, what got you started as a keyboard player?
Well, my family's into music, so I have to credit my father and his band, John Cafferty and the Beaver Brown Band. They did the movie Eddie and the Cruisers, rock and roll music. So I used to go to sound check. Yeah, I used to go to sound check and see my father's keyboardist playing rock and roll, and I thought, man, that looks cool. And he used to say, you know, during sound check, if you learn Green Onions by Booker T and the MG, you can come and sit in. So I practiced for 8 months just to learn that one song, so I could sit in at sound check, not even the show. And that was the taste that got me going. And then one of the groups that had opened for my father's band when they were really, really small, I had the opportunity to go see my very first arena concert. And my father's like, yeah, you know, this guy, he's a really good guy. His name's John. His band's really good. The tour was called Slippery When Wet. It was John Bon Jovi. So this was my first arena tour. And I was like, John Bon Jovi used to open for you guys? He's like, yeah, he's a great guy. Okay, cool. So that was the start of it all. And I went to school in New Bedford, Massachusetts, dreaming of wanting to go to college. And so first I went to the University of Lowell, and it's now called UMass Lowell. They have a music program there, and what I love about this place specifically, which is different from U Lowell, the focus is all about performance, musical performance, singing, playing an instrument. And everybody else, they had a sound recording department, but it was kind of looked down upon. And part of me was that, because I was friends with all of my father's crew guys and knew how much work they put into their craft. And I thought that, you know, that side of it should be equally billed with the performance side. And during that time, my junior year, I kind of lucked out and got this audition with the New Kids, left college, toured with them, but then still had it in me, wanted to finish. So I went back to Boston and I went to Northeastern University. And that program up there is not as large as this, but it's similar. You have music business programs, music recording programs, and performance, and everything's weighted the same, and everybody looks at you the same. Nobody's looking down on you because, you know, you want to go play rock and roll or play in a pop band. So that was pretty cool.
Yeah, that's awesome. When I was in college, they didn't have a lot of music programs. They had a few specialty schools, but they didn't have a lot of music programs. So I always say my years with the New Kids, I learned a lot from my college education of how the business worked, and I was their agent. I used to book the tours for the band. But I got to deal with the musicians and the road managers and the concert promoters, and it was, you know, a window into how the whole industry is set up from the business side. And that's what kept me in this business for 25 years. You started at a pretty high level, meaning the artists that you're working with are name, you know, household names and people that are pretty established, although when you started with New Kids, they were just starting out. You know, one artist that he's worked with is Madonna, and he's been the musical director and musical designer for her tours. What's it like working with someone of her caliber, of an organization that large, you know, compared to other experiences you've had? Is it any different, or does it really depend on the artists themselves, whether it's different or not? I mean, can you comment a little bit on that?
Sure. I think the first thing that comes to mind is working with Madonna is the best musical experience of my life, because as an artist, she is across the board pulling from not just music, but dance, photography, politics, social commentary, poetry, literature. And you have to be on your A game every single day, every night, no matter what time it is, and you have to be able to work in an environment around other people that are like-minded. and it challenges you to not censor yourself when you're creating music or creating arrangements, and you really want to push the envelope. So working with her is the top. I can't think of anybody else besides somebody that I idolized when I was a kid, which is Michael Jackson. It was just Madonna and Michael. That was it. Everybody else was cool, but nobody else was doing concerts, selling records, using the types of musicians, engineers, and supporting staff. Nobody else was doing anything like that. So for me, that was it. And now to be able to work with her since 2007 on the Sticky and Sweet World Tour and this last one, MDNA, as well as the Super Bowl, all of that stuff was pretty intense.
I'm sure, I'm curious, and I'm sure other people are, how, and I'm expecting that you're going to answer that she's very involved, but how involved is she in creating the vision? I mean, she seems like from the outside that it is her vision, and her team are executing her vision. But do you, as musical director, are you able to, contribute ideas, or does she expect you to deliver things to her as far as what the show is looking like, or what it's sounding like? Is she open to collaboration, or is it all in her head and she says, okay, this is what I want and you need to deliver that?
I would think, in my humble opinion, I would say Madonna appreciates people that are thinkers outside of the box. That you're not going to she doesn't want to micromanage you, but she wants you to follow the direction that she's given for whichever the show that she's putting together, whether it's a halftime performance or a small theater show in Paris. She wants to make sure that you've read up on her history musically and where she's trying to go currently, because she's constantly evolving, doesn't want anybody to say, you just get up on stage and play like a virgin. That's what we want from you. No, she's not going to do that. She's going to get up and she's going to play what she wants to play. Not me, not anybody's going to tell her that.
That's cool. You mentioned Michael Jackson, and that's a good segue into, what I find interesting about what your career is that you've done it live in performance as a musician, but then you've entered into a theatrical world. You've collaborated with Cirque du Soleil as a musical designer for Michael Jackson's One and Michael Jackson the Immortal musicals. What's the difference between, or how is the transition, or how do you find it different being in the theatrical world? What kinds of things are you facing that are from a musical perspective as opposed to recording, or as opposed to touring and performing live? Are they similar arenas, quote unquote?
I find it very drastically different, because when I'm up on stage performing, you could be playing a stadium, and a lot of times people think, wow, there's 80,000 people, that's really hype, you must really want to jump and do this, but no. When I'm up on stage, I see whichever artist I'm working for. That's pretty much it. In the band that I have, I'm not caught up in all of this that's coming up here. That's for the artist. Me, I'm here to make sure that every single night that we deliver and execute the musical arrangements to the best of our abilities. So the difference between working with, say, Madonna doing that and then going to the Michael Jackson Cirque stuff is I'm off stage and I'm sitting in the back, kind of being able to hear everything in its total. When I do that, when I'm performing, it gets kind of challenging, because now I'm playing, and while I'm playing, I'm trying to think, oh my gosh, I hope this person's on point, I hope this person's on point. So you have to multitask while you're playing, so you have to know your parts cold. And lyrically, you have to know all the lyrics to the songs as well. So during the sound check, if somebody asks you, hey, what's the lyric here on the third verse of this particular song? So you have to be on point that way. Whereas sitting back with Cirque, it's a little different. I wouldn't say it's easier, it's different, but
maybe more predictable. What's going to happen?
No, I wouldn't say predictable. It would be easier to put that music together, because you don't have, say, like Madonna on you every single day. Like, when are you gonna have this done? When are you gonna have this done? I want it right now. It's not as stringent over there. But I just have to say at this point, that Michael Jackson show, one, out in Las Vegas, I have some friends that are here that have seen the show. Cirque puts together some amazing shows, and this one, as well as the Beatles Love, are incredible. And I had the good fortune, because I've been such a huge Michael Jackson fan my entire life. My good friend Jamie King introduced me to the estate of Michael Jackson. He told me, they're going to do this show, and it's going to be a hybrid of Cirque du Soleil with Michael's music. And I said, of course, I'm into it. Now, this room, everybody that's into music production, the estate said, okay, so here's the set list. It's not in order, but here's all the songs we could potentially do. And then they sent this guy with a locked briefcase and said, here's all the multi-tracks. Wow. So I got to sit for the first show, Immortal, for a year and a half with the multi-tracks. Wow. Now, the first thing that I did is, as soon as you put on like Rock With You, I shut everything else off and listen to Michael's vocal. And when you do that, me being a touring guy, pretty much is really what I do most of the time, you listen to that vocal and you start remembering when people would go into the studio, there was like a preparation that we don't have anymore, because technology has kind of paved the way where we can go and we can fix things. But before that was there, people would actually rehearse before they went to the studio. And that's what Michael Jackson did. And you can hear it on those tracks. You go in and he was going for it. He would come in and sing those vocals 3-4 times. And we're not talking sing a verse, sing this. It's like all the way through, and when the tape would stop, you know when you listen to the record and it fades out? Well, on these masters, the tape keeps going. So I get to hear all the stuff that's in there.
All the hiccups.
Absolutely amazing. And it's like everything that he's saying, there's like no mistakes. It's like different levels of genius. So then after that show, I had the chance to do it again for Michael Jackson 1. And the difference between the two shows, the touring show is kind of like an arena experience. So you've got a 14-piece band, video walls. The legendary Greg Fillingane's piano player was Michael's longtime musical director, so the estate had him come out on tour. And that's when I got this title of musical designer. I'd never heard of that before. Cirque du Soleil.
I was actually going to ask you.
They made it up, and they said, you're the musical designer. I said, okay, great, because who's going to tell Greg Fillinganes he's not the musical director? Right. Not me. He's been on everybody's albums. So I got to work closely with all of those guys putting that arena show together. And then when we went to Vegas and put this show in Mandalay Bay, that show's generated from all the multi-tracks. And the sound system in that room is unlike any other on the entire planet. Because when you come in, you take your seat, right behind you on your chair, there's speakers here, but on the chair in front of you, there's a mono speaker here. And then the room, similar to your live room over there, you have a full-on arena PA that's hidden behind a proscenium that looks like the Dangerous album cover. And there's surround speakers everywhere in true Cirque du Soleil fashion that you cannot see, but they're all there. So you give a guy like me a laptop, Michael Jackson's Masters. I'm a fan, I know some of the choreography. And you give me this sound system, and you say, go ahead, you just don't exceed like 108 dB, you know, you'll be all right. So I sat there and I started taking, not like surround where you will take like drums and percussion, just like make it wide now. When Vincent Price starts the rap to Thriller, which I got the second verse that it's not on the album, it starts in the back of the theater. It moves sideways and it comes around. So picture like at Point Orlando, like the IMAX theater, which was my template. I was like, I want it to be like an IMAX movie, but with Michael Jackson's music. So that's like what I had the fortune to do. Yeah. And I actually, while I was on tour with Madonna doing MDNA, every day off, I was doing the pre-production in my hotel room with like 8 different solid state drives that I carried with me under lock and key everywhere I went. So I had no real days off. And I'm not complaining, but it was really cool.
That's awesome. I saw the Beatles Love, and that, I remember when I sat there and I could hear it behind my head and on either side. It was just an amazing experience.
No, it is. It is. You start to think,
you
remember music differently when you get to hear it mixed that way. Yeah. And there's so many things musically that you take for granted. Everybody knows the album Thriller, yeah, it sold a lot of copies. And you're like, wow, you know, Billie Jean, great song. But when you listen to some of the components in this theater, you remember like, oh, this dude was the truth.
Yeah.
He was the creative truth.
You've done a lot of audio mixing for artists in the live setting. People like Justin Timberlake. Talk to us a little bit about the overall process of audio mixing and some of the techniques that you might apply.
With Justin, I started with In Sync in '98. So I just wanted to clarify that because I ended up going into mixing the audio because I was his musical director and keyboardist, and I knew all of his songs since In Sync. Another amazingly talented individual right there. And when we did the Future Sex Love Show in New York, we ended up mixing it in New York. And so it was myself, Justin, our front house guy, Andy Meyer, and one of the engineers up in New York. And so to take everything that we had done on that show, which we had set up in the center of the arena everywhere, and we mixed it live in quad sound, it made it interesting when we had to mix it for the DVD, because it was, you know, we had gotten used to hearing everything moving around, so now we're back to just regular stereo,
Right.
which is the primary mix, and I don't know, his music just, it mixes itself. You've got such great band members, such solid performers, that they give you really good performances, so that when you put your hands on this audio, it's pretty easy. You just follow his vocal, and it pretty much mixes itself.
Right. Do you have just another personal question? Do you have, or I want to ask, do you have a preference, large or small venues, as far as working? Are they both similar challenges? And
I never really think of it that way.
okay.
I think in terms of band size,
Small or large?
always larger. Because if you have a larger band, we did this event for Justin out in Las Vegas. It's one of his charities for the Shriners Hospital. And we brought out like a 16-piece band, horn section, background vocals, multiple keyboard players, which Charles Wilson, my keyboardist on Justin, came here to Full Sail. That's how he got the gig. He was here going to school, and I met him. And so did Demo. Demo works with Timbaland. He's one of the engineers, mix producers. He's currently working with Madonna. His picture's outside in your hallway over there on your wall. That's pretty cool. But sorry, just having a moment here.
Large or smaller?
I'm thinking about we had a bunch of different artists on that show that year. Alicia Keys, to Snoop Dogg, to Taylor Swift. And to be able to cover all of that music, you had to have musicians that could obviously be versatile enough to cover all those genres and play it believable. And it was challenging. It was a 3-hour show. I went online, I went on YouTube, I checked every artist that played with us that year, the arrangements that they were playing currently at their concerts. So like the recorders were kind of, a little rough, but as long as I could hear their arrangements. So when they got there, I told them, hey, we learned it just the way you play it. And they were like, really? Like, yeah, this band's pretty good, trust me. So then we got up there, and now after this show, I've got friends that are on Alicia Keys. I've got friends that are on Taylor Swift because we murdered them that night. So much so that their managers called me up, hey, remember that guy that was in your band? Can he come out on tour? Sure he can. Here's his phone number, call him up. So that worked out. I don't think of it in terms of larger or smaller venue, just band size.
Band size. It's funny, as an artist manager, I'm always in favor of smaller bands, but it's just because logistically and financially makes it easier. You and I probably got started in the business around the same time. Things have changed a lot. My first job, there were no computers, there was no internet. We had, everything you did was by phone, there's no Travelocity. I did a lot of logistical stuff, so those are the things I think about. In your world, things have changed significantly since you started, as far as, audio options. The technology is just at a different level right now. How has that been for you over the years? I mean, you're talking about the recording. I like older recordings because you hear all the parts and you know that everything was not fixed and that people recorded afford to be in a studio for very long, so you really had to be pretty definite about what you were doing once you got to the studio. You know, any comments that you have over the years, new technologies that you like?
I love it. I love old technology, new technology, and the thing that excites me the most about still touring, because a lot of people ask me, am I ever going to retire? I'm like, no, my father's 74 and he's still gigging. He just played here in Orlando like 3 nights ago, so no, I'm not going to stop. And what I love about live performance, because the recording industry has changed so much and the record business has changed so much, but there's not too many large recording studios anymore. So that art of going in and recording is pretty small for this genre of music. So the only place where you can challenge yourself like that is in live shows. Because I know that some of the artists that I'm working with, it's going to become a DVD. So now I'm going in with that mentality that, you know, Thelonious Monk would say to his band, look, I'm going to play this song once. If you mess up, it's going to be on the record like that for the rest of your life. Because back then, they were recording, you know, to lacquer. So that was that. So on these live shows, yeah, we can do some fixing and editing. I'm a digital performer guy, and I do all the programming for the tours, and I mix the DVDs after. But that being said, if somebody plays something that's extra crazy and it gets picked up in the audience mics, that is where you're going to have a problem. So that's when everybody has to be on point. You're on point every day, but when the DVD shoot shows up, you have to be extra shiny.
I see a hand. Got a question? Are you yawning?
No.
Okay.
Do you find it hard to like tone down when you're doing like a sound design for live performances, like on the details, or do you just bring it out on the DVD? Because sometimes they might not hear it in the audience, but since you mix the DVDs too, do you just bring out what you want them to hear on the DVDs?
That's a great question, and you are exactly correct. On all the detail and the programming or the arrangements, and that's pretty much how my career has changed from just being a keyboard player to a musical director to a producer, because I wanted to make sure that every step of the way, that everything that I've put in, or the artist, or the musicians that I'm working with, that integrity is maintained so that when the listener gets it, that they're hearing everything that I think, you know, the artist want them to hear, or that I want them to hear. So on some of these arrangements and some of these mixes, yes, I will not censor myself as I'm thinking and helping create an arrangement and put it all in there. And then once we like it and we get attached to it, and this is what I love about Madonna, once she likes something, that's it. If somebody comes and tries to change it, she's like, nope, put that back the way it was. And she's sharp. She's not going to miss anything. And it's the same thing working with the Michael Jackson estate. A lot of people don't know this, but half his estate is John Branca and John McClain. Now, both of them one of them's an attorney, one of them's a record exec, but they're both musicians. And they're really, really well versed in all of Michael Jackson's music. So, you know, you get questions like, hey, you know, where's the percussion part in Working Day and Night? Like, oh, you heard that? Oh, okay, cool. The percussion part in Working Day and Night, that's like kind of out there. I'm glad that you heard it though. So, yes, I like to make sure, I'm not a control freak, but I like to make sure that everything that was put into this is heard and not lost.
Do you ever add anything?
All the time.
All the time.
All the time. And that's the difference too, like playing with Justin, and that's amazing because we had put together these 2 arena shows, but we used to jam out at soundcheck with him. So then he got inspired from watching Prince and was like, you know what, let's do like a show after the show. And so we started doing these club shows where we would take the arrangements that we played in the arena, and we would show up, just the band, no dancers, and, well, they would come, but they wouldn't be performing. They'd be part of the crew, and we would take one of the road cases, set up a bar on the stage. It was pretty fun. So we did all this stuff and changed the arrangements live in front of everybody, the way I came up in music, where it was just not locked to anything in the arena. So it's fun to do both shows, and so by taking that element and putting it back, it made it very interesting for him as an artist. It was difficult to do 2 shows in a day, but it's fulfilling.
Well, that's exciting because he's challenged by music. You know, it's not just the performance an entertainment factor, but he's musical. You know?
He's very musical, and because of Justin, part of my career as a songwriter and producer through the group he was in NSYNC, that's, you know, started here in Orlando. I had the opportunity to have him on my tour bus a whole bunch of nights just writing. So a few of the songs were good, and then one of them was good enough that it actually got on No Strings Attached. And it's the only song on the album that's like full live band. If you listen to Justin's first record, like Senorita and all that stuff, where you hear like live drums and real keyboards and real Rhodes and electric guitars and stuff like that, the song that him and I had done, that's what it was on NSYNC, and that's what kind of led him off in that direction. So I thank you for that. It was fun.
Yeah, that's cool. You know, there's so much pop music out now that doesn't seem like it's as musical as that. So have you had to work with artists, and you don't have to name names, where you know, they're not real musicians, or a lot of stuff is pre-recorded, or, I mean, are you taking on those kind of clients, or are you sticking to
I have not had that happen to me like that.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty much everybody that I work with has something that they bring to the table. There's different levels of musicality.
Mm-hmm.
Some people aren't as, you know, as skilled vocally or, you know, instrumentally, but everybody has something special to them. And what I try to find in every artist that I work with is there's always like an idea. So like all the technology, that stuff, I love technology, but it's all transitory. It's all gonna change. 5 years from now, it's all gonna change again. So what stays the same? The original intent, the idea, the integrity of what you're doing at the time. So it doesn't matter what software you're using, what keyboards you play, or what guitars, or what instruments, or how you mix it. It's always gonna be about, you know, your approach, your intent, your dynamic, and your personality. So I try to find that in all the artists.
Yeah, that's good. And actually, another thing that I thought might be interesting is, are there certain skills or personal attributes that you think are important to having a successful career, that these guys are all going to be launching their careers in the next few years? You know, in your experience and with your expertise, you know, is there anything that kind of, I mean, to me, something that I've over the years noticed, the people that are the most successful are the people that have a vision and are focused and are not waiting for somebody else to bring that to the table. You know, and people who can be adaptable in any setting, you know, put their egos aside, maybe apart from the star of the show, but a lot of the other people that are involved in the production, if you can put your egos aside, you're going to have more of a chance for success. Is there anything like that that you feel like you've learned over the years that
I was
has helped you
fortunate
to-
enough where my family, like I said, is in the music business. So my father had told me in regards to touring, he said, just remember these few things. You spend 2 hours on stage performing. You spend 22 hours with your band, your crew, and all the staff. So don't be a dumbass. Be a good person and be easy to tour with. Don't be a slob on the tour bus. Like, just basic things. You would think that it's not major, but you get one of these people on your bus that's a little crazy, and then, you know, you find that you want to leave them at the Burger King 5 hours back and let them make their way to the next gig. The other thing that...
you hope they miss the call time?
Yeah, that happens. Guys that forget their passports when they pack it in their luggage in Europe, and then they have to ride with the bus all the way to Ireland from, you know, mainland France. It happens. John Blackwell. Sorry.
Not naming names, of course.
No. But the other thing is, in regards to live performances, whether it's 10 people, 10,000, or 100,000, each night go out there and play it the way that you love to play it. Don't slack, because you're doing yourself a disservice, and you're going to be doing the audience. It's paying a lot of money to come and see these shows, because we all know that the record business is in deep trouble right now. And hopefully somebody in this room is going to figure out how to save it. But yeah, so
But in the live business is very healthy. So
yes, it is.
It's the one area that you can really focus on. It's funny, I always say you never know who's in the audience. And if you're playing in front of 10 people or 10,000 people, those 10 people are as important as the 10,000 people, and you need to be on your A game everywhere you are, because it's going to help you get to the next place. Everyone here is, pursuing a career path. Any advice that any advice that you have for these guys to keep in mind as they're entering their career besides being good on the
learn from everybody that does something different from you. That's something that I try to do all the time. I learn so much from managers, from video content designers, from choreographers. They help me think of music differently. Like I wouldn't, certain arrangements I wouldn't structure rhythmically a certain way because a choreographer is dancing to different things that they hear in the music, which is different than what my keyboardist hears. So I would tell you to think of all that as you approach a live music or a recorded music setting. If you're going into engineering and production, then obviously you have to spend a lot of money on music and listen to everything and listen to how these records are being mixed. Stay up on all the technology because, like I said, it's going to change. But certain things never change, and that's what I learned on that Michael Jackson one. You're given these multi-tracks, and at the same time, you're given this responsibility that you don't realize at that moment how heavy it is until you say, okay, I have to mix Thriller the way Bruce Wittian mixed it with raw wave files. So if you have the basics, some EQ, some compression, you can work magic. You don't need all the extra bells and whistles. You can just do it with EQ and compression.
You look back and think of any, and this is always a hard question to answer, but what have been some of your biggest challenges in your career so far? And, what steps did you take to overcome them?
The biggest challenge for me is always balancing my family life and my tour life, because the artists that I work with, they tour for a long time. And anybody that knows me will tell you that I either go home or have my family come out on the road to come see me wherever I am. And so much so that now in some of my contracts, I actually write that in there so that I can not have to worry about it when that time comes. And I know it's not a musical question, but that is the biggest challenge.
It's an important question, though,
Yep.
because you're human beings, you can't just focus on the work, and it is a work. So you have to, I think it's a delicate balance, but it's a hard one. And I know I have friends who have been, on tour and missed the birth of their child and regretted it a few years later, or something like that. You have to think about things like that. So what's on the agenda for the rest of 2014, 2015? You working on anything new, or?
Yes, I am actually, and I fly out tomorrow to continue. There's a new show in New York. They're billing it as a social musical theater experience. That's what the producers are calling it. And the show is called Pop Nation. It's based on a fictitious late 1990s boy band and pop princesses, and a storyline that kind of shows that genre of music in the early days before there was like an American Idol. So all of that is in this show, and the producers had gotten my name through a mutual friend, a choreographer, who told them, yeah, this is the guy that worked with New Kids on the Block, and Backstreet Boys, Sing, all the pop groups, Britney Spears. So they called me up, and we worked on some original music, and the show's going to open the second week in November.
Is it on Broadway, or?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a little off-Broadway, but...
Off-Broadway. That's cool. I'd get a kick out of that show, just because I worked in that too. Well, I don't know if you guys are all pondering questions there. You're not raising your hand, but I thought maybe we could open up the floor to any
There's one
questions
back
for
there.
Kevin.
Quick question. Have you ever worked with the percussionist Sheila E. before?
I have not worked directly with her, but she's come to several of our rehearsals. She came to one of our rehearsals for the Rihanna tour, for the Loud tour in 2011, she's good friends with Nuno Betancourt, the guitar player from Extreme who plays on Rihanna's tour, and so she had stopped by. She's amazing.
I did a volunteer thing in St. Thomas, Caribbean, and I volunteered for her show, and I got to meet her hands-on experience, like seeing her do all the percussion stuff. She's a really good musician.
She's a great player, and she's a great listener. Because all the people that play in the band for her, they know that when you go there, it's like a showcase of musical talent. It's not just about a production value. She's gonna get everybody and make you like really play. So it's fun. Whenever we're in Los Angeles and Sheila's working on a tour, you hear them, 11, 12 at night in their little room, and everybody, there's like a little crowd standing outside the door listening.
Anybody else? Oh, come on, you guys. Oh, got a mic. One more.
Hey,
Are you
Kev.
looking for interns?
Am I looking for interns?
Yes.
I would love to. I just don't know how that works when I tour because
Dollar West.
I would love to have interns, but then I know every manager that I know would say, all right, I have to pay for the hotel room. I have to pay them per diem because they just can't come out here. That's what we would run to.
I'll be your intern pro bono.
There was a question?
Yeah, Kev, why don't you tell them about rehearsal in LA, like center staging, how you guys network as musicians, such as Charles going with John Mayer, and how the last 15 years, how you built a network of doing things right. Because as students, they read books and they see this sounds sexy. Everything you say is sexy. Oh, I've worked for this one, I worked for that one, I worked for this one. Explain to them how not only do you do it right, but you treat people right, and how your networking ability in center staging, where there's 10 rehearsals going on at the same time, how that kind of unfolds. Because I don't think anybody's ever really seen that real side of it.
You bring up a good point. That's Joe Mulvihill, manager of Boys to Men, the Jacksons, good friend of mine. Networking. Some of my good friends, I'll get to the rehearsals in LA, but some of my good friends that I went to college with way back when are still in the music industry and are really doing well. John Whitcore works, I think he's like the East Coast rep of Avid, so he's doing pretty good. And then my buddy Tom McGurk, he bought this studio out in Seattle, Bad Animals, from the group Heart, and that studio is where Eddie Vedder and his group recorded their records. So there's a lot of guys that I know that are, and girls that went to, both ULO and Northeastern that are still doing big things. And so I've had good friendships. I've never tried to burn any bridges. So it's always good to have friends working in different parts of the business. Now, out in Los Angeles, when you get to putting together a tour, if it's pretty much anybody other than Madonna, they usually rehearse at a place called Center Staging, and it's multiple rooms, large rooms, tons of musicians, tons of crew guys everywhere. So you can literally walk out of one room, and then when we were working on Justin's tour, I made a friend at like 2 in the morning. It's the strangest friendship I got, I think, is, Tommy Lee, the drummer. He was working on the Motley Crue thing, and we had the same drum tech. Our drum tech on Justin is Tommy's guy. So they were having a problem with programming, and I go into the room, they asked me to come by, and Viggy says, yeah, Tommy's doing all this programming by himself. He's a DJ programmer. So it was just me and him. And it was weird because you see all the press on the guy. Don't believe everything you see in the press about every artist, by the way. You see all the press on the guy. He is crazy, though. And you see him working. Like, not just playing the drums, but like thinking about, all right, when we do the show top to bottom, here's what it is. Here's the high, I want to get down over here, and then I want the program to do this because I'm going to do this drum solo, but I want some electronics to support this particular part. Now, that relationship never would have happened had I not been in that environment where I had a drum tech that's a really cool guy who thought it was a cool look to say, hey, Tommy, what? Timberlake's dude can come over here and help you with this real quick because he's a buddy of mine. That seems to be the phrase. You hear a lot of guys on crew say, oh, I got a buddy on this tour, no problem.
It's a good point too, because in the old days of recording studios were a place that you met people, somebody would be recording in the next room over, but now that there's so much production being done at home, in home studios, you don't have that networking opportunity as much, so you do need to be alert to who's around you, and you know, if you have the chance to meet somebody, not in a pushy kind of way, but in a natural way, that you can forge a relationship that could turn into something a couple years later. And remember that they met you, and that you worked on justice or whatever it was.
Is Polestar, the magazine, still like the #1 publication for tours and finding gigs?
Polestar? You know what I use Polestar? I go online and that's why I want to see who's playing in Orlando, who's playing wherever I happen to be going. But
It's a trade publication,
Yeah.
so it's really just listing the tours. Are you talking about pursuing work with the tours?
I'm a camera girl. I have a TV show. I like to film live shows all the time.
Right.
My first tour happened by accident. I was in the Navy. I went to a Def Jam concert, fell in love with Public Enemy, ended up talking to the promoter, and the next minute I know, they put me on there.
The Polestar usually is
I didn't know
when the
nothing
tours
about
are already
Polestar.
set, so you can find out when things are already in the works, but it's really a trade publication to announce where things are set. You're not going to
So
find.
what would be the best online website for finding out where these?
and most of the time not even the managers, because the managers aren't going to tell you. But the crew, they find out because they have friends at either Live Nation, AEG, that are putting holds on venues for a potential tour that will happen. And they'll say, hey, you know, I heard such and such might be the production manager on this one because it's going to go out next year. That's how I hear of buzzes.
Be word of mouth.
Word of mouth and costly.
No, you know, what you were saying, by accident, I know another guy that happened to. He started off as, he was filming B-roll footage for Britney Spears, and now he turned into a manager, and he managed the Jonas Brothers, but he started like just walking backstage videotaping.
Okay.
I think this is time for our last question, and then we can have to wrap up. I think right there.
I just have a question. Do you think that in general the quality of the musicians and the producers is going down thanks to technologies as Autotune, triggering, all of those stuff?
No, not at all. I don't think that the quality of musicians, engineers, artistry, I don't think any of that's going down. What I think is going down is the general public's perception of copyright. That's what I think is going down, because I tell my kids all the time, you know, I'm always watching it. It's kind of hard. I'm telling them, don't spend too much money here on iTunes because I see it on my credit card. But then again, don't you dare go over there and download that for free, because I'm in this business. What's wrong with you? You know what I'm saying? Because like, if people are stealing music, like when this first started, like with Napster, Sean Fannin went to Northeastern University. You know, I was gone, but I mean, he went there. So I saw it when NSYNC, Backstreet, Eminem, all these artists were putting out records and no strings attached. First week, 2.4 million records sold. It went to go on and sell 15 million records. But then after all file sharing started, we started watching it go down like this, go down like this, and now there's so many different legal loopholes that so many people have figured out ways where you can get music, not have to pay for it, that now in the newest generation, the kids honestly think, well, why should I have to pay for music? They're not being mean. They just honestly think, well, why should I have to pay? It should just come with it. It's like on my phone. It's on Pandora. Why do I gotta pay for this? Try to argue that with a 15-year-old. And it makes you see where the music business is going. Because this generation is gonna grow up thinking, oh, you know what? I'm gonna go see Guardians of the Galaxy and I'm gonna pay for my ticket. Well, how come you won't pay for that CD in the store or pay for that? Well, why? It's music. That's the problem. I think it's a lot deeper than the technology, and it's definitely not the creative minds that are going into making this, because I think, if anything, technology to me, it always assists, because there's a lot of people that wouldn't be musicians or producers if they didn't have the technology that's now. Like 20 years ago, people couldn't just, go to a studio. First, it was expensive, and the gear that was there, a lot of people didn't know how to operate it. Now, I could take my phone out and work on GarageBand if I had to, and build a little arrangement, say, hey, like this. So you can do things that you couldn't do before, and people that aren't players can play. And I think that's fantastic. I also think that if you can play, try and play without quantize. Don't fix everything, because you're going to take the heart out the music. And I mean everything. Bass lines, drum beats, don't quantize everything. Leave some of you in there.
I think that's a great way to lead this discussion. I want to thank Kevin Antunes for being here today, and thank all of you for coming.
Thank you, everybody. I hope it was helpful. And,
You guys are the future of the music business, so I hope that you get creative and figure out how to make it last for another 25 years.
Okay, everyone, thanks so much for coming. Thanks again to Melanie and Kevin. Thanks so much for your time today. I hope you guys